Hello and welcome to our podcast. I'm Dani, and today Grit.com talks with Brandy Pretlow, the VP of Community Initiatives at Active Minds. If you haven't heard of it yet, Active Minds is opening up the conversation about mental health and creating lasting change in the way mental health is talked about, cared for, and valued in the United States. Before we begin, as always, remember if you're new here to this podcast, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. Now, hi, Brandy, and welcome.
Thank you, Danielle. So good to be here.
It's a pleasure to talk to you today, Brandy. And I think our listeners will really profit from this conversation. I have mentioned to you before that I love this bit of saying, let's change the way we talk about, let's change how we perceive mental health. And I feel like after the pandemic, this really became something that we are looking differently. We were forced in a way to look at it differently, but it's something that has been an important matter, especially in young adults, right? This is the range that you mostly work on, 14 to 25, if I'm not wrong. So this has been an important issue, since ever. So let's begin with history, right? How did Active Minds begin? What was the story behind the founding and what inspired the creation?
Yeah, thank you for that, Danielle. And as you said, mental health has been an important issue forever. It's just now and now we are talking about it even more. But Active Minds was founded in 2003 by our executive director, Allison Malman, after her older brother died by suicide at the age of 22. Her brother's mental illness motivated her to start the first Active Minds chapter in University of Pennsylvania dorm room. And we know that her brother's story is not the only story we've heard of people dying by suicide, especially young people. There are so many people out there who are suffering and continue to suffer in silence. And we know most mental illnesses start between the ages of 14 and 24 when teens and young adults are in school. And so really Allison's mission is around how do we create and change, or how do we change this stigma and create supports for those who are dealing and managing their mental illnesses. And that's where we got our start.
That's amazing. And I love that you brought this because I think at first, when I was doing the research, I really located your actions with this university context, right? School context, but you're really acting beyond that. So let's talk more about how are you guys changing the conversation about mental health? What does that mean? And how do you actually do that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, a little bit about our mission and our journey. We started off wanting to change the conversation and are still doing that. And we are also shifting now to like, how are we supporting youth and young adults with taking action? We know that as more and more conversation has been going on around mental health, that there is more awareness. And while we still want to do that, we want to support young people with being able to mobilize for change. And that means equipping them with resources to do so. That means connecting them with other youth mental health champions. And that means helping them platform and activate their own voices for change. And so that's really the crux of our work right now. We do change the conversation, and we want to mobilize and support young people to be able to do that.
Let's dive into this a bit further and understand how does that reflects on the programs that you have. What would be your highlights? Because I feel like you're covering some ground, right? You have a lot going on. So what would be your highlights and how those programs are structured?
Yeah, we have so many programs that I won't talk about every single one of them. I think one of our most well-known and longest standing programs is where we started our chapter network. So we have over 500 chapters at colleges and high schools across the US and Canada. And really these chapters are understanding the mental health needs of their communities and their campuses. And we are supporting them with putting on events, making advocacy for change. And so, a few examples, depending on the college context, some of our chapters have advocated to add the 988 Lifeline number onto their student ID, so that's easily accessible. We've had some chapters who create and mobilize fairs so that local mental health resources can come on campus and young people can connect to those as well. We have other chapters who really host events with other departments on campus around how to stress less and take care of yourself during those challenging times in the academic year. So the impact our chapters have is wide and great, and it's really dependent on their context. Another one of our programs that takes place at college campuses is Send Silence Packing. So this is our traveling exhibit that goes to about 60 campuses and communities. And really that exhibit focuses on storytelling, so mental health storytelling. So it has stories about survival from suicide attempt. It has stories from those who supported people who have been having challenges with their mental health. And really the goal is to create a sense of empathy and connection for those who are coming into the exhibit, and a sense of I feel understood, because a lot of us have had those moments of either challenge or loss or lack of hope, and then connecting them with like, here are the things that you can do to support your own mental health. Here are the things that you can do to support your peers. And here are the things that you can do to support your communities. And so the last part of that exhibit is connecting them to the mental health resources. They have an opportunity to share their own story on a video platform that we have, and also share a bit of hope by writing something on our hope wall that we then return back to the community. We have a lot of different programs, but those are just two that highlight some of the work that we are doing directly in partnership with youth and young adults across the nation.
I like those highlights of yours because it gives us a perspective of the tools that you're empowering people with, right? Because I feel it brings two aspects that are vital for us to understand and overcome some mental health issues, at least in my experience. One that is really owning your life, your mental health, and making it a priority to the point where you're able to demand rights, demand change. And this is really a step forward. And then the second aspect that it's cast a light on it, right? Put it out on a show and tell people, hey, let's look at it. It's not an invisible thing. You don't have to hide something that's being so difficult to you. So those are beautiful, beautiful tools and ways to address it. And to everyone listening to us that would like to learn more about it, I encourage you to take a look at their page, which is activeminds.org. We're going to add the link in the description of the episode here so you can easily access. And then you can understand more about the other programs that they have, the impact that they are making, and understand exactly some other aspects of mental health that we might not be able to cover on this episode today, but you're going to get much, much more information in there. Brandy, I'm going to move to this empowering position that you mentioned, because I think when you brought this first program and talking about kids advocating for change, really making small things sometimes, but they have an immense impact on their lives. It's so important to really give them this sense of, look, you are able to change the way things are and they don't have to be so cruel. So what do you see, or better, how do you see this empowerment in the kids, especially the ones that are more engaged in the programs?
Yeah. So I guess the first thing I'll say is, I feel like Active Minds position, we're really around like activating and mobilizing. And I think sometimes stay away from the word empowering, because there's this real true belief that our youth and young adults hold power, right? And what we can do from lessons learned from being in this field is support them with activating pathways to be mobilized and accessing the power that they already have, which is their knowledge, their experience, etc. And so I think that's just like a really important nuance to highlight here in like supporting and really making sure that youth and young adults are centered. And so a few ways that we do that, in addition to the programs that I already mentioned, we have our Mental Health Advocacy Academy and our Mental Health Institute. These are two programs, one's for high school, one's for college students. And we are supporting them with developing a mental health action plan to impact their communities. And the participants in these institutes in the academy are BIPOC and LGBTQ plus youth. So, we help them to understand and bring into the experience their own experience as being a part of these communities and historical context, and helping to develop a plan and a strategy for how to create change in the spaces that they're in. So we're super excited because we just launched our Mental Health Institute at our conference this past weekend, and it went really well and just such great energy. And I felt was also just inspiring and motivating for the staff to be surrounded by these youth and young adults who are making things happen on a day-to-day basis. Um, did I answer your question? Happy to go.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And actually, you gave me such a different perspective on it. And I love this a bit of empowering, right? I think it's a word that I use for so long without really thinking further about it. And there are nuances. So thank you. Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah,
I
of course.
really loved
Of course.
it. And I also liked that you mentioned some of the intersectionalities that I feel like are important to address, like social contexts,
Yeah.
historical context, and those things do play a important part on the weight. I don't know if that's the good word, but anyway, the weight of life on our mental health. So it's wonderful to hear that you guys are looking at it as well. So really, really
Yeah.
impressive. Yeah. And now, Randy, looking at the future, especially since you said about they do have this power, what are the future goals that Active Mind has?
Yeah, I mean, our number one priority is to change how mental health is valued and prioritized across fields. I think one of our newest sort of initiatives in the past few years is our cause and career website, which is we have the desire and the goal for young people to connect their passion in mental health to their profession, and recognizing that it doesn't just have to be, I'm a clinical social worker, so shout out to all the clinicians out there. But we know that to change values and norms of mental health, it's going to take more than clinical social workers or clinicians or therapists or psychologists doing this work one-on-one or in groups of people. That is absolutely important, but we need people across all fields to be, ringing the bell or shouting from the rooftops or whatever the metaphor is around mental health. And so, cause and career, our goal is to help young people, youth and young adults, connect to the passion for mental health to other careers. So one example, one of our chapter members from years ago was always interested in journalism and interested in mental health, and really thinking about like, how can I combine these two? And I mean, this is sort of a case in point with like journalism and interview. You absolutely can, right? You can write about it, you can do podcasts, you can do all these different things to change how mental health is valued and prioritized. And so that's really our ultimate goal, to do it across the field, so that this is something that not only people are talking about, but taking action for.
And I'm happy that we are part of this
Yeah.
in some way. Yeah.
Thanks for joining the movement. We appreciate it.
That's why we're here for. So,
Exactly.
yeah. And Brandy, one thing here that I sometimes have the chance to ask our guests is about funding, right?
Mhm.
Because I still think there is a misconception of how energy work, how NGOs work, right?
Mhm.
That, oh, you don't need money, you don't, right? So how, or maybe better saying, where does your funding comes from?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have a large amount of funding from different foundation, nonprofit, and family foundations. We also receive, some funding from individual donors, and some funding from corporations. With that said, for those who are familiar with nonprofits, most times the funding we receive is for a year or maybe two. And so we're always, always, always fundraising to be able to continue these programs, and that to continue these programs and enhance these programs. And we also want to maintain changes within generations, so to be able to update programs when we need to, or shift gears. And so with that, always looking for more opportunities to fundraise, for sure.
Yeah, and talking about this to everyone listening or watching us on YouTube that want to get involved, what would be one, the best way to help you guys, and two, how can we get in touch to do it?
Absolutely. So a few different ways. One is to visit our website to learn more about our programs and bring a program to your campus or community, or for youth and young and adult, apply to some of our programs that are available on the website. I think another one is to certainly donate or connect us to other people who could potentially donate funds to us. Like I said, we're always fundraising just to stay up to date and current with what youth and young adults need. And I think the last one is participating in our digital experience. So in May, we recently launched a digital experience called ASK, which stands for Acknowledge, Support, and Keep in Touch. And we call it the Stop, Drop, and Roll of emotional support. And the website is asktohelp.com. So you can visit that website and participate in this fantastic YouTube interactive experience to really learn tools of how to support your peers with regular, normal, emotional, mental health conversations on a day-to-day basis.
That's awesome. We're gonna definitely add a link to that
Thank
on this
you.
description as well. Brandy, thank you so very much for joining us today. This was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Danielle. Take care.
You too. It was a pleasure. And to everyone else listening or watching us right now, thank you so much for staying for one more episode. And remember, if you liked it, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app, because that shows the algorithms that this is an important conversation. And then we can spread the word about the importance of active minds. Remember to check their page, get in touch, help out if you can, and learn more. Maybe if you are struggling with something, maybe you can help someone that is struggling, and their page can be a good way to start and to learn more and to get involved into action. Right? Bye. And I see you in the next episode.